Have you ever seen a fish dead on the side of the river before? If you're an angler, have you noticed less fish in your fishing spots each year? Have you ever seen water quality difference and not known why? Well, believe it or not, it may be because of dams. Dams have impacts on the wildlife and the ecosystem itself. They have the ability to alter and change river quality, fish habitat, and the ecosystem. If you're an angler, dams affect the amount of fish that are caught due to water quality and oxygen restrictions when the waters are dammed. Furthermore, they can affect the food industry with less fish being caught, which means less food-based fish on the market. When dams are released, massive floods are sent downstream, causing rapid erosion, which in cases can cause people to relocate their homes. As an environmental science major, I have talked to my professor and my classmates about topics such as this. I have done research on this topic and think it's something that more people should know about. First, let's discuss why dams have a negative impact on water quality, then why it's bad for fish habitat, and then finally, the overall impact it has on the ecosystem. First, let's discuss the ways it negatively affects water quality. Dams can impact the water quality in different ways, ultimately ends up hurting the ecosystem in the region. Organic materials that would usually get washed downstream by the river are getting stuck at the dams and consume large amounts of oxygen due to their need to be deteriorated. When this happens, algae blooms occur downstream, which create dead zones incapable of supporting life. When the water is released into the system below, nitrogen can be mixed into the water, causing harm to the fish. The reservoirs behind the dams itself usually have different water temperatures, colder towards the bottom and hotter towards the top, which make it hard for fish to survive. In Flag Bolshielo Dam on the Olefins River in South America, a study on dam impacts was done. They determined that during stratification, the dams caused dissolved oxygen and pH values to increase in the system. Now that we've seen how a dam can impact water quality, let's discuss how they are bad for aquatic habitat. Dams alter how the habitat is constructed, which in turn is bad for species. The river is a system that is always changing and moving things throughout. Dams block substrate, such as gravel, sand, rocks, and large pieces of wood. Furthermore, substrate continues to erode and get carried away from the lower water section with nothing to replace it. Large pieces of wood help form pools in the system, and substrate makes a unique river floor, which is all great for unique aquatic habitat. The river ends up becoming channelized with fast-flowing water. The Hydropower Reform Coalition, or HRC, stated, downstream of a dam, the river is starved of its structural materials and can not provide habitat. So behind the dam in the reservoir, the habitat is not beneficial either for most species. Predatory species such as the northern pike minnow prefer slower deep pools. This means that predatory fish will be more successful, in turn losing numbers of prey fish species and even maybe native species. The dam builds up algae, which consumes most of the oxygen in the reservoir. Furthermore, toxic chemicals such as pesticides and metals are trapped behind the dam, not allowing them to get filtered out of the system. Now that we've seen such specific impacts on the dam, let's discuss how they affect the overall aquatic ecosystem. Dams have a negative impact on the aquatic ecosystem as a whole. Dams have a major impact on fish that are migratory, such as salmon. Salmon that are born upstream have a harder time traveling downstream to spawn, because they either have to go through a dam or over a dam, which causes stress and can even harm the fish. The result can be lower spawning rates in the system and fish dying, which in turn drops the salmon numbers. For example, wild salmon numbers in the northwest Colombian River Basin have dropped by 85% since big dams were implemented nearly half a century ago. A dam will hold water at times when there is a low need for power generation, but will release it when there is a high need for power generation. These sudden changes in water flow will change the river's composition. It will erode banks, causing change in how the river flows itself. Also, during water surges, it destroys fish habitat and washes out nutrients that are needed to support life. During times when the water is held, it can leave fish stranded and lead to more predation. Mostly, all dams have a purpose for providing water for agricultural businesses. This in turn causes more fish to be stranded in irrigation channels and be killed by getting sucked into watering systems. The chemicals that are used in these agricultural businesses can be washed by rain and end up in the river system, which can harm fish and even in severe cases lead to their death. And dams might be beneficial for clean energy production. However, dams have a significant impact on the river ecosystems. Dams have many impacts on the river ecosystem, such as oxygen restriction, water temperature change, water composition, limiting substrate, making fish passages difficult, and changing how the water flows. Dams ultimately change the water quality, the aquatic habitat, and the ecosystem. So next time you're going somewhere and you see a field being watered, wonder yourself, how does the water get there, and what effects it has on the river system, which we all so care about?